The Korean League has been the most dominant league in history, peaking in 2014, having the two best teams in the World Championship. When money started flowing in the Chinese league, the LPL, naturally, most of the Korean talent went there to get paid, making it very difficult for native Chinese players to be good enough for their own league. But there was a player who dreamt of not only making it to the league, but to do much more than that. You know him as Knight, the golden left hand.
I doesn't want that to happen. Jumps to the pipeline, drops his tongue, is trying to buy time. There's Kingslayer, I was in trouble as well. The E dodged away from, flashed away from, but it's a double jump as he has another stopwatch. Knight is unbelievable! The triple kill for the Chinese mid laner.
Knight was born and raised in the vibrant city of Pingxiang, located in eastern China. From a young age he would start streaming his solo queue games and eventually gaining great recognition at a very young age after reaching rank 1 on the Korean server multiple times. Meanwhile, in a local internet cafe in the city of Pingxiang, he met various talented players. This is also where he met Yagao, whom some of you might know. This is where Knight and Yagao would build a great friendship, but also a fierce rivalry, as they both wanted to show who was the best mid laner from Pingxiang, often playing each other over who has to pay for dinner. They both had great aspirations to join the LPL, but Knight's traditional parents were not a big fan of the idea that their 17-year-old son would join a mysterious organization to play video games all day. However, it was PDD who was able to change this. He once was called to be the top laner of the Chinese All-Star team, but retired shortly after. At the moment he encountered the parents of Knight, he was the owner and head coach of a team called Young Miracles, and he was known to be a truly kind man. One time a fan found his address and went to PDD's house to ask him for money. PDD did not send him away, gave him the money and even paid for a hotel for the fan to sleep in. He is also known to treat his players like family. Famously, Ning, who ended up becoming a centerpiece of his team, was scammed and tied to a contract of a fake team when he was only a kid. Ning couldn't escape his contract and it was PDD who saved him from the situation and brought him to his own team. His players would often come to the house of PDD to practice, and it was PDD personally who went to the parents of Knight directly to persuade them that Knight was a very talented player and he should play professionally under his wing. Young Miracles was a team in the LSPL, which is the second league behind the LPL. They already had some great up-and-coming Chinese talents. Ning, the boy who was saved by PDD, was their AD carry. Their support player was Ming, who later went on to become one of the best supports the LPL has ever seen. The season before Knight came along, Young Miracles was already on a great track to advance to the LPL. In summer, they were a tied first place in the regular season, recording 19 wins out of 26 series. After an easy road to the finals, they had to face the team they were tied with in the finals, Newbie, a team with very strong up-and-coming Korean players by the names of Klit and Doenby. The winner would be allowed to go straight to the LPL, the dream of any Chinese organization. Young Miracles made it a very close series, but ended up losing 2-3. However, they were still eligible to try and compete with the bottom of the table LPL team to take their place and advance to the LPL, but ended up losing as well in another heartbreaking 2-3 loss against the LPL team of veterans by the name of OMG. After this disappointing defeat, their support Ming would go on to leave the organization in the search for better opportunities, and their jungler left as well, which meant that their AD carry player Ning had to transition to the jungle role for the first time in his professional career. But watching their greatest rival Newbie walk over to another league, leaving the hole in their competition, and the signing of a young prodigy mid laner, perhaps next split could be promising. Not all good solo queue players become great professional players, however, so the only question was, how would Knight's great solo queue performances translate professionally? With the new mid-jungle combination of surprisingly talented jungler Ning and young prodigy Knight, they would decimate the competition, losing only one series out of 22 in the regular season. Knight had to get used the first week or so to play on stage, but he got comfortable real quick, often winning games all by himself, in every way as well. He could play from ahead, and even if he lost his lane, which was not often, he would always find a way to have a great impact in the team fights. He would do it on a lot of different champions as well. His champion pool was so big,
How big is it?
that at a point the team decided to use 4 bans on the enemy mid laner because they knew that Knight always had an answer, no matter how many champions from his pool were banned. In this game, for example, the enemy mid laner was left with very few options and he was forced to pick Vladimir. This gave Knight the opportunity to pick Kassadin. This champion is known to be weak in the early game, but Knight knew that Vladimir wouldn't be the champion to punish him early on, and he proceeded to scale fast, impact the whole map, and he became the man of the match once again. But it was not just Knight who had a great split. Ning as well, who was already there the split before, really established himself as one of the best up-and-coming junglers, often playing early game carry junglers like Lee Sin or Kha'Zix, being really explosive in the early game, making it very difficult for their opponents to react. With this newfound mid-jungle synergy, they became the heavy favorites to advance to the LPL. And after reaching the finals with ease, it would only be Suning that stood in their way for their spot into the LPL. A team that they have beaten before in the best of 3 series. With Knight, this wouldn't be too much of a problem, right? Disaster struck. They were defeated 0-3. Suning Gaming knew that they did not have the individual talent to beat them straight up, so they executed many strategies in which they showed off their superior teamwork. Even though Young Miracles was a team with a lot of raw talent, their communication was clearly lacking. So when Suning came with a newfound coordination, Knight, Ning and the rest of the team were not prepared. Team Suning won the finals with ease, and the Young Miracles couldn't bear watching Team Suning lift the championship trophy, as they packed their equipment as quick as they could and left. At least there was one other shot to enter the LPL. Playing an LPL team to advance and take their spot. Who are we playing? Oh, just a team who has one of the greatest AD carries of all time on their team, plus Godv, one of the best LPL talents of this era. 0-3, once again. In the past year, Ning and the Young Miracles organization had 4 chances to advance to the LPL through a best of 5 series, and all 4 of them they have lost. Sadly, this will be the last chance for the Young Miracles organization to advance to the LPL via this system, as the LPL have announced that from this point on there would be a franchising system put into place, which means that all the spots in the LPL are locked for the teams that are already in. This was the final straw for Ning to depart from the team as well. He had played 2 years in the second league and was ready for his next step to prove himself as a worthy LPL jungler for his next team, Invictus Gaming. Knight stuck around for the summer, as Ning was replaced with another young talented jungler of the same age as Knight, who would make his debut in professional play. You might know him by the name of Tien. The question is, could Tien fill the shoes of such an important player of the team? He was only 17 and his first series would be against the best team in the league, Vici Gaming, with Easyhoon, also known as the previous backup mid laner for Faker on SK Telecom. A lot of pressure for the young jungler, but in game 1 he already had a large impact, stepping up to the occasion every time he had to, especially when it came down to taking objectives, hitting every important smite, and in a long and thrilling game, they came out with the victory. Only to get defeated 2-1. In the next series, when they played against the second team of Starnhorn Royal Club, Knight had an uncharacteristically bad game, dying several times in lane, and after losing their inhibitor, it was Tien again, together with their top laner Close, who stepped up to make the comeback possible, with Tien making the clutch Baron steal to win them the game. This time, they closed out the series in game 2 to give Tien his first professional series victory. This was enough for TN to prove that he belonged, and he started to build his synergy with Knight. But with the rock of the team gone, they were not as competitive as they were beforehand, as the summer split was much more competitive, with Young Miracles sharing a second place in the regular season with two other teams, and a playoff run where Young Miracles once again swept their way to the finals and lost to a strong team 1-3. This time it was Vici Gaming with Easy Hoon on the steering wheel that got the best of the Young Miracles. And because Knight was about to turn 18, this was the right moment for him to make his next move as well. Remember that Suning team that beat Knight's team to be the last team to advance to the LPL? While Knight was building his synergy with TN, Suning was making an impressive run for themselves. It was the first split they participated, but they already were able to make the playoffs. They were a young team, but they were well coached, and for the upcoming split they will get their hands on the core of the Young Miracles. Not just Knight, but their new jungler TN as well. Knight's hometown rival Yagao, who had also been playing in the LSPL just like Knight, was about to get signed by an LPL team named JDG. He would be replacing Doumbé in the mid lane. The LPL consisted of 14 teams. These teams were split into two groups, the East and the West. Every team would play best of 3 series until they had played twice against their group opponents and one time against the opponents of the other group, making it 19 series in total. The top 4 of each group were eligible to make it to the playoffs, where the remaining teams would compete for the LPL Championship. Suning already made it to the playoffs before, but this time their group was tough. They were in the same group as historical powerhouse RNG with Uzi and Xiaohu, Invictus Gaming with great players like Rupee, The Shy, and of course Knight's previous jungler Ning, Doumbé's team Rogue Warriors, and Yagao's new team JDG. Suning's team was promising, but none of them had even played 1 year in the LPL. And this is how it went.
The strength of...
Oh, he's gonna be the target. Yeah, caught by another one. He doesn't have the ultimate this time. Huge amount of burst, and he goes down. Meanwhile, Karen in the back trying to find a way in, but Tian happily trading with him. He actually gets the kill with Knight. Meanwhile, Xiao, Al, Yoon, and Fury are happily finishing off this fight. Goom, the sole survivor, gets back. Listening for their more patient play. It pays off to me because quite a bit of damage. Wow, Knight just obliterating him for now. Will get knocked back by the ultimate. Flawless is gonna show himself. Mouse is low. Knight gets the solo kill, trying to get out of there. He might just do it. Doumbé's trying to wrap around. Knight trying to down Flawless. He gets the double kill. Outplays him 3-on-1. Knight, what a kill.
That's game 2. Going on over to Invictus in a 2-0 sweep. And that's going to really hurt if you're Suning Gaming because you got the big advantage. You were on the borderline of breaking open the base, but
Comes in, and Hara's able to wipe out Xiao out. This is not even going to be close. Simply drops the miasma, chases it down. Yeah. Wow. To back him up, Goong attacked by Knight, and he's going all the way in. Has the ultimate.
Suning should have the theoretical advantage, but Hacker, he's below 500 hit points. Knight jumps in, he's killed him, he killed Flawless, the jungler is dead, and Hacker jumps in. Suning have destroyed Rogue Warriors in the Barrow Pit. Massive trouble, it's a triple kill that gets picked up by Fury, and that could just very well be game.
Before the last week started, this was what the standings looked like. Suning had almost done it. They exceeded expectations and were 1 game away from making it to the playoffs from the group of death. The previous week they had beaten Rogue Warriors convincingly, with Knight making the game deciding play at Baron. It was between them and JDG, the team of Yagao of all people. The one person Knight had to beat. Both of the teams had to play one series. JDG had to play against Rogue Warriors, but Suning had to play against Invictus Gaming. This seemed impossible to most people, because this meant that this team of rookies had to break their win streak of 16 series in a row. From the get-go, Invictus Gaming knew who they needed to target. They threw everything they had at Knight, but they couldn't catch him. He was having a great game on his signature champion, Echo, and Invictus Gaming was not stopping him. But they could, however, pick up his teammates, one by one by one. After such a performance, you could think to yourself, what could Knight possibly do to win this? IG was clearly the better team. Well, he could always carry harder. This time it was Suning who threw everything they had at the mid lane. They knew Knight could use the advantage, and they ended up finishing the game just by ganking and punishing the mid lane without an answer. This meant the series was 1-1. One game would decide the fate of Knight and his team. But this became a humbling experience for Knight. Rookie was arguably the best mid laner in the world at the time, and after the embarrassing manner they got beaten in game 2, Rookie had to show the rookie mid laner who runs the league. Rookie became MVP of the split. Yagao's JDG won 2-1 against Rogue Warriors, and Knight paired with Suning were 1 point off making it to his first ever playoffs. He still made a good name for himself, with many pros praising him. He had a good season individually, winning man of the match 10 times, 4th most of anyone in the league. And with everyone on the team being so young, who knew what the future of this team would bring? You hate to see it happen. Someone not being able to play over something he has no control over. Knight's contract from Young Miracles never expired. Instead, 9 was sent as a loan to Suning so he could pursue his dream to play in the LPL. But Suning never actually paid their loans to PDD, the owner of Young Miracles. But for the sake of ending things on right terms, PDD was willing to not receive any of the money. But only if Suning was willing to let Knight go. But they refused. As a result, Knight was still on Suning's roster, but never actually able to play. This after such a hot season was devastating for Knight. But he didn't sit still for the season. He pushed for the Korean solo queue ladder and had gotten 2 accounts in rank 1 and rank 4 respectively. PDD had taken him under his wing once again. After the season had ended, Knight was eager to make his presence in the LPL, and this time he wanted to compete. But with the LPL having most of the best mid laners in the world, all of the teams in the top of the table already had a mid laner. Luckily, he came in touch with a fairly new organization called Top Sports Gaming. Top had recently bought the LPL spot of former bottom of the table team Dan Gaming, and they seemed pretty serious with their approach. Guo Hao, the representative of Top, invited Knight to a dinner together with PDD and some investors. Guo Hao already had conversations with Knight before in PDD's house, when Knight still played in the LSPL. Apparently, Knight stared at the long dinner table and Guo Hao asked him multiple times if he wasn't hungry. Knight didn't flinch or say a word. Later in another room, Guo Hao approached Knight privately and asked him if he really wasn't hungry, to which Knight replied, "I don't like to eat pork." Knight had no idea if the food had pork, but he was too shy and anxious to ask. Until now, Knight was only a kid playing video games for his whole life, and since his adulthood, it was PDD who took care of Knight. Knight agreed to join Top Sports Gaming, but in the beginning the team was very surprised as to how clumsy and unknown Knight was to the real world. He didn't even know how to order a pizza or food with his phone. The team took their turn to take Knight under their wing and learned him how to take care of himself. And they also taught him that he could place his mouse on the left side of his keyboard. Yes, Knight thought that because he was left-handed, in order to play, he had to cross his arms so that his mouse is still on the right side of his keyboard, like the rest of the players. And he said in an interview, that he only started playing regularly once teammates in top told him that he could. Let that sink in for a moment. He was beating the best mid laners in the world, playing with his arms crossed the whole time. It was as if inside the game he was a total opposite of how he was outside the game. Inside the game, he wasn't clumsy and ignorant. In game, he was decisive, fierce, calculated, and relentless. In the previous split, Top placed 3rd place in their group to make the playoffs for the first time in the history of the organization. They were led by Marin, who used to be the top laner of the championship winning SK Telecom team with Faker. With Marin leaving after the split, they were desperate to sign someone to build their team around. Knight filled this hole beautifully in the off-season, and with the absence of Marin, they also moved their academy top laner to the main roster by the name of 369, becoming the youngest player in the LPL overall. Before the league officially started, however, they were able to compete in the tournament called the Demacia Cup to feel out their roster a little bit. The best Chinese teams were competing, including RNG, EDG and Invictus Gaming, who didn't just make the historic split of 18-1 happen, but they also just came back from winning the World Championship. And how did Top play with their new and young roster, you might wonder? Shockingly, they almost won it all.
这样的话，我就知道了，就是上单的特加特去打鳄鱼，然后维克多来到下路，那他的长手，都本身是一直有着射线，小马一边回到之后抓到了一波闪现过来，打出一个伤害，这时候雷波又是没有闪现的，还有战将跟大头领到第4场了，是由蜘蛛拿到了一血，自己的阵容打。 一闪大招过来，一舔一发平 A 那个过来，到了4个人，现在东北方这个大招进场之后，输出还没有打，但维克多已经东北已经拉开了，先把对方的鳄鱼给击到了，东北开始进场了，他们能不能打下小球？他们完全不管团战，直接一波带走镜中的水晶。
Either Knight's endless grind on the Korean solo queue ladder was paying off, or the fact that he realized he didn't have to cross his arms anymore to play the game, or the hunger inside had awakened him after missing all his goals just narrowly from not promoting to the LPL 2 times in a row and just missing the playoffs by 1 game the split before. Whatever it was, now he seemed to have entered an entirely new dimension, because he was playing even better than before. When his team met Invictus Gaming, it was very different from the last time Knight had to face Rookie. Knight was solo killing him again and again and again. Knight was out for blood. They sent IG to the loser bracket, after which Top had to play IG once again in the finals, but this time they lost the finals 1-3 to the world champions. However, the world was on notice when it saw the sudden growth in performance from this young team. Suddenly, Knight was seen by LPL viewers as arguably the 2nd best mid laner in the world, right after Rookie. Knight already had the respect, but clearly missing the playoffs by 1 game lit a fire under him, making the playoffs would not be enough for him. He wanted to win, and he wanted it bad. LPL started with a slight change of format. This time, no more groups, just 16 teams competing for the top 8 to make it to the playoffs. And compete he did.